Great. So, 45 minutes ago, if I said for you to tell me about the tortoise and the hare, you'd say it's about a turtle and a rabbit and a race, right? But now we're talking about the structure, the inciting incident, the climax, the resolution, the moral, the characters, the plot, the genre. Is that not looking at it structurally? Are you not looking at the building blocks of the story? Can you look at art structurally? Can you look at architecture structurally? Every time you look at it plot-wise, character-wise, building-wise, material-wise, you are using the structural lens. You've done this before, right? Say yes if you've done this before. If you've done an analysis like this before in my chats, say yes. This is not your first time doing an analysis like this, say yes. This is your first time? This your first time? So you already knew how to view things through a structural lens. Now you have the word for it. Now when I ask you to look at something structurally, you will know what I mean. When a stranger asks what you think of something structurally, you will know what they are talking about. Good job. You used a lens. Let's look at another. So this is your second lens for the day out of 3. This is your socioeconomic lens. We are going to talk about what everybody loves the most, money. So take these notes down. This also includes the questions you need to ask anytime you view a socioeconomic piece. It focuses on wealth, poverty, and social connection, and how they affect the characters in the piece of literature or art or history. Specifically, these are the things to look for. The way different demographics are represented in the text or the art. What worldview does it represent? Who holds the power? What does it say about class structure? And be sure to analyze the social effects or the message behind the text or the history. This one's going to hit home. I know it does for me. We probably already know what wealth and poverty and social connections are. Do we agree that they have effects on people and things? Pretty easy to recognize that. It explores the way demographics are represented. Rich people and poor people are demographics. Black people and white people are demographics. Men people and women people are demographics. Short people and tall people are demographics. You can have multiple demographics. You could have short, tall, and medium height people. Brown hair people, blonde hair people. Black hair people, red hair people. Any of those can be demographics. And how they are represented matters. And what does the worldview of a text mean? And by text, we can mean art, we can mean history, we can mean fiction. What worldview is coming across? If you've had US history, you know about propaganda, and that expresses a worldview. But then there's also things that are just the facts, right? Doesn't necessarily express a worldview. Who holds the power? And that's where the socioeconomic comes in, because does anybody agree that money can equal power? My folks in the chat, give me a $sign if you think money can be equal to power. Got a few of y'all agree that money can equal power, a lot of y'all now. And then it asks what's being said about class structure. Is there an upper class, a lower class, a middle class, a working class, a slave class, a royalty? What does it say about the structure of the society? That's the socio part. When we talked about Egypt, we only talked about two groups of people, didn't we? Who did we talk about in Egypt? Not just the richest. Yeah. Who did we talk about in Egypt? What two classes of people did we mention in our talk of Egypt? So them, and who else? Do you think there was anybody in between?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
So we didn't even talk about them, did we?
That's usually how it goes, though. Middle class people. Because society is more focused on the wealthiest.
So what's that word? Society is more what? You said it's an F word, focused. Remember what lenses do? So you, without knowing it, you've been looking at it like this the whole time.
And the fact that I never knew that there's an actual word like meaning to it.
Yeah,
They should think.
just handing you tools. So my folks in the chat, what two groups did we talk about when we went over Egypt? What two classes of people did we talk about? Slaves and royalty. That's all we mentioned. But like me and Carla were just saying in the classroom, there are other people in there. There are plenty of people in between slaves and royalty. You have funeral directors, you have dentists, you have bakers, you have cooks, you have merchants, you got lots of people in between. And I only mention the slaves because it's important that they get mentioned. But most of the time when you learn history, you're only going to hear about the royals, the wealthy people. You might hear about a riot or a revolt or a revolution from the lower class. Yes, Marlene, you don't have to ask moving forward. Just make sure you don't carry your device with you. So you just want to recognize that whether you knew it or not, you were looking through a socioeconomic lens all through history, only paying attention to the upper crust. And then you're going to analyze the social effects of the message. Does this text or this piece of art comment on something? So using pharaohs again. If I put a golden pharaoh on top of a bridge in New Orleans in a painting, and underneath the bridge, there was homeless people living in tents, would I be making a message? What does the pharaoh represent? If he's made of gold, and we know that he's this god king or she, and they're up on top, and then you got all these homeless people underneath, I know there's no pharaoh in New Orleans, but if I put that art in front of you, what would you think about it? How would you interpret that? How would you interpret he represents power? Yeah. And what do they represent? What are those people down below him? Keep going. Their poverty, they're not, yeah. So you're seeing it through the socioeconomic lens because of what you know about society and money. You apply that to what you see. But not everybody's socioeconomic lens is as sharp as everybody else. If you have been rich your whole life, what might you think about poor people? Yeah. Yeah, it's called taking it for granted.
Yeah.
My folks in the chat, if you have been rich your whole life, what might you think about poor people? They don't have anything, that they're ungrateful, they're nothing important, that they're disgusting. I have personally heard all this language from people in my lifetime. Like sincerely being said to me. Less human. Now, if you have been poor your entire lifetime, what might you think about rich people? Spoiled, greedy, never struggled, they got it made and it's easy for them, snobby. Now, if you were born rich or born poor, and then you got the other one, so you were born rich and then you turned poor, or you were born poor and then you got rich, would your socioeconomic lens maybe be a little sharper than someone who's only had it one way? You might be more humble. Yeah, you might be able to figure it out a little bit better. You would have more clarity. You would know what all the things look like. You might be wiser with the money that you have. So not everybody's lens is the same. So if you've been one way your whole life, if you've been a man your whole life, you maybe never know what a woman's life is quite like. If you've been Black your whole life, you maybe never know what somebody Vietnamese's life is like. If you've spoken English and only English your whole life, and then you meet somebody who doesn't speak English, you might have a feeling some way or another. So your lens is informed by your experience. So here's a quick do now. I just want you to write these answers in your notes as we look at a clip. We're going to watch a clip. Yay. In second period, it actually didn't lag too much. So we're going to watch the first 3 scenes of The Princess and the Frog. Now y'all listen. But you need to have these questions at the ready. So take a pic of these pictures or write them down real quick. Because I want these questions, these 5 questions answered. And we're going to talk about it. What do you observe about social status, about financial status? Who's rich, who's poor, who's upper class, who's lower class? What kind of power dynamic exists? Who's on top or who's less than? Who's working for who? Who's got the money? Who don't got the money? What did the scenes say about the society that the characters live in? What motivates the characters? And is it related to social or economic betterment? In other words, what are these people about? And are they trying to get a leg up some kind of way? And what clues in the film, or what do clues in the film provide about the character's financial status? In other words, can you tell who's poor or who's rich just by looking at them? And how? So without further ado, I'm going to take a moment to share the other screen. And we're going to watch the first, it's about 11 and a half minutes of The Princess and the Frog, but I want you taking notes throughout. Yeah, I'm always sad when we stop there. But as much as I would like for us to be able to watch the whole thing, it'll start skipping again on the songs and it'll just get real frustrating because it does not handle music well on Google Meet. Um, but yeah, I saw in person y'all were writing down some notes. So just reflect back to us what you saw in reference to these questions. So we're going to share out for a second just what we saw in reference to the socioeconomic lens. When you went in looking for things, what did you find? So I'll put the questions back up, but my folks in the chat, let's popcorn some of these. And my folks in person, let's chat a little bit. Rich and the poor, yes indeed. What y'all saw?
Especially if they're really young, and you're ready to put them into that mindset that, okay, I can get anything I want, you know?
Yeah.
So they expect that their whole life, even leading up to the adulthood. That's why I feel like, I'm sorry, like Cuban, but that's why I feel like, most like rich kids don't really steer away from their parents.
Yeah.
Because that's where most of it.
Yeah, I know them. I went to school with some of them. Okay. The blonde girl was a spoiled brat. Now, was Lottie mean at any point? No, but was she spoiled? Oh, yes. Rich people get what they want. Setting, she was a complete sweetheart. In fact, she gave Tiana just a wallet full of money just to make beignets. She didn't realize she was creating an opportunity, but do we recognize that with the flick of her finger, she made everything Tiana wanted happen? So that's called power. She's got power because the power is money. So could you tell who was rich and who was poor? How? How can you tell? So we got the houses. How else? Ooh, good answer. Their transportation, how they dress. So Tiana takes the streetcar, but how do Lottie and Big Daddy get around? In their own car. How they speak, which I would argue is more of a cultural thing than necessarily a money thing. She worked a job, Lottie did not. So who's on top and who's less than? Yeah. Now, do they mean to be on top? Now, do they want to harm Tiana or her family? But that's where they are. They didn't do that to themselves, but they exist in that world. What do the scenes say about the society the characters live in? People with more money are on top. Yeah. What motivates the characters? This is the important one. Yeah, you're right. It has many classes. Because what's really great about this one is since it takes place in New Orleans, you could see black people with money and black people without money, white people with money, white people without money. So it's not just one thing or the other. Yeah. The clues from the film provided, she had to save up money just so she could get a restaurant. What motivates Lottie? What does she get excited about? Well, she's already that. Yeah, so she's excited about the prince. So will the prince elevate her socially or economically? Yeah. Will the restaurant elevate Tiana socially or economically? Yeah. So both of them are motivated by social or economic mobility. Lottie's already rich, but now she wants to be royal. Tiana is not rich, but she wants to make a living. Now we could stop and talk about through a racial lens why all the white princesses Lottie included, have been told, wish upon a star, wish upon a star. Somebody's going to do it for you. A prince is going to come. And they tell Tiana, the first Black Disney princess, they tell her, if you work really hard, one day you might be able to pay for a restaurant. But we're not going to go there and recognize that it's still progress. It's not perfect, but it's something. Wow is right, Deshana. But Tiana also has a lot going for her personally. Now, anybody want to tell me, do you speak Spanish or French? And if so, what does Dr. Facilier's name mean? Think about his name, Facilier. What does facile mean? So how does Dr. Facilier make things happen for you? Which way? Is it the hard way? It's the which way. It's right there in his name. So he makes it easy for you, but what cost? Yeah, it costs you something to get it done easy. It's black magic. But Tiana is not the easy way, is she? Tiana goes about things the hard way. So Disney baked his name to tell you Dr. Facilier is not a good doctor. He wants to go about it the easy way. He wants to get it without what? How are you supposed to get things? You earn them, you work hard. Dr. Facilier is not that. But he's still motivated, we come to find out, by the economy. So now we've looked at the Princess and the Frog through a socioeconomic lens. Now we got other lenses. We got the racial lens, the psychoanalytic lens, the moral lens. And every day I teach you something about art, I'm telling it to you through a historical lens. I'm giving you geography lessons. I'm giving you, this is the world of the artist. You know, I'm telling you what was going on, divine right, polytheism, people living out of caves. All that's a historical lens. So there's lots of lenses that you can work through. But for Monday, you're going to need just one lens. So I have an announcement, and then two more after we finish up. The first announcement is I have been called away on Monday. So you will not have me on Monday. But my assignment for you is already scheduled to launch at 8 a.m. You got something to do. But that means there will not be a meet for me on Monday. But you will have a Google Classroom assignment through a lens. The lens you will need on Monday is the gender lens. If you are listening to me and not like listening to music and your fan on, what lens do you need on Monday? What lens am I going to have you looking through on Monday? About a dozen of y'all paying close attention. Very good. It's going to be the gender lens. I'm so glad you asked, Ms. Rodney, what the lens is, because I'm going to tell it to you. I'm going to answer your question with a question. What does Lysistrata say about women? What does the play say about women? Okay. Women have strength, men don't recognize it. What does Lysistrata say about women? Give me some answers in my chat. What does it have to say about women? Answer. That they're important, that they're equal to men, just as strong as men, should be taken seriously. Good. All those are things that are being said about women in Lysistrata. That's how you view something through a gender lens. So these are the questions. You could write these down, or they're in the assignment on Monday. if you write them down, they'll be easier to answer. How are women portrayed? How are women treated? Do women have their own motivations? Do women hold positions of power? Do women have jobs? So somebody name a story. Any story. I'm going to pick my favorite one. Put a story into the chat or pick a story out here. It could be The Princess and the Frog. It could be Avengers. I don't care. Name some stories. I'm going to pick my favorite. It could be a movie, story, book that I know. Ooh, these are so good. So I want to do Mulan. I also want to do The Help. Moana's a good one too. All right, so let's begin with Aladdin, and then we're going to come back to Moana. In Aladdin, how are women portrayed? Are there women?
Yeah, but they're only pictured in like a beauty way. They're only there to look pretty.
So Jasmine's real pretty. She's a damsel in distress. And then you got that moment right there at the very beginning of Aladdin where he lands in the cat house. You know, the ladies of the night, that he comes into their house, they're portrayed as hookers and Jasmine. How are they treated? Is Jasmine considered equal to the men? In fact, what is Jasmine to Jafar? Jasmine's just like a way for him to get power, isn't she? Do women have their own motivations? What is Jasmine, what is she motivated by? We don't know, do we? Does Jasmine hold a position of power? Royally, yes, but does she have any agency? Does she have any control over her own destiny? Does she have a job? No? Okay, let's keep going. Does Jasmine solve her own problems? Is she intellectual? Yes, she can have intellectual. Are there more than 2 women that you know the names of? Unless Raja is a woman and she's an animal. No. There are not even 2 women. They don't talk to each other because they don't exist. And so they can't talk about something besides men. So through a feminist or a gender lens, Aladdin does not appear to be a great representation of women, does it? No. Okay, we'll come right back to this, so don't freak out if I go back. Let's talk about Moana. How are women portrayed in Moana? Well, let's find out. How is she treated?
Her own ideas or her own motivation wasn't important. That's what she needed to do.
So she is disrespected in a way. Yeah, the expectation was that she do one thing. Does she have her own motivations? Does Moana have her own motivations? Yes or no? Does she hold a position of power? Yes. Does she have a job? Not yet, but what's she going to be in a few years? She's the next chief. So she actually is in a position of power. Does she solve her own problems? Yes. Is she intellectual? Yes. Are there more than 2 women? Yes. Do they talk to each other? Yes. Do they talk to each other about something besides a man? Yes. Moana holds up. Aladdin does not. Ariel gives up her species for a man. The Lion King holds up, because without Nala, we would be nowhere. So looking at it through a gender lens, you're asking yourself, how does it portray women or men or the idea of gender as a whole? That's what you're looking at. So if you've ever been a woman, you might have looked through this lens before. Why do men get treated like this and I get treated like that? If you're a man, you may have thought, why do women get treated like this? I get treated like that. Example. Girls are smarter than boys, right? Remember that in elementary school? If you look at that through a gender lens, you realize that that's BS. But that was the expectation, because you're looking through the gender lens now. Just because you see it through a lens, though, doesn't mean it's the only truth. So, for example, The Princess and the Frog holds up really well under a gender lens. Do the women solve their own problems? Yes. Are the women intellectual? Yes. Are there more than two women? Yes. Do they talk to each other? Yes. Do they talk about something besides men? Yes. How are they portrayed? Very well. So much female representation. How are they treated? Great. Do they have their own motivations? Absolutely. Do they hold positions of power? Sure do. Do they have jobs? Tiana does. Princess and the Frog checks off every single box. So it's the best ever, right? But then you recognize in The Princess and the Frog that they've told every white princess that you get whatever you want, but the first black princess has to do work first. So through a racial lens, there's some problems, even though through the gender lens, it looks good. Structurally, it may look good, but socioeconomically, there are some challenges to it, right? So just because you can't get fixated on just one lens. So I bring that up to say, just because you get a hold of a lens you like, doesn't mean that everything about that is good. But when you see it through the lens, I'm asking you what comes into focus. So on Monday, I'm assigning you a movie. It's free to, or a musical. It's free to watch on YouTube, although you might not be able to get it on the school computers, so you might need to use your own device. We're watching Legally Blonde, the musical. And we're going to watch it through the gender lens and see, like with Lysistrata, what does it say about women? Good question. Do not know, but you'll find that out on Monday. So that's what you have to do on Monday. So get familiar with looking at things from a different perspective. I started making calls earlier today, but I haven't made all of them. But if you're still missing a bunch of assignments, you're going to hear about it from your parents. 2, I assigned an extra credit assignment. If you don't like what you made on your test, you can do the extra credit and get up to 15 points. It is an art assignment.
Mr. Carrero?
Got? You can keep it. If you failed, I expect you to do the extra credit to pull your grade up. So that's available now. Your assignment for Monday will be available starting Monday at 8 a.m. I will not be here. I will not be on a meet. But you will be watching Legally Blonde, the musical, through a gender lens and answering these questions about it. These questions and these questions. So now you know what's going to be asked of you. Be on the lookout. If you have any questions, let me know.
Mr. Carrero?
Take questions about individual things as long as they are not too personal.
Mr. Carrero?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
You said that you grading it
Oh,
like
I'm sorry,
artistically.
I'm muted because of the video. Just repeat that for me one more time.
You said that you grading the thing like the extra credit artistically. What about the ones who have a hard time drawing? Cause not all of us have talents to like draw.
I'm gonna say do your best. Make sure you're putting in detail and effort, and I'll be able to tell. Like if you spend the time on it and put the detail into it and have clearly studied the work, that's gonna mean more to me than if you turn out something that looks like a photograph. So use the best of your ability, and you can get creative with it. You don't necessarily have to draw. You can put it together as a collage. You could put it together like coloring images that you already have. It could be a lot of different things. You can be creative with it. No, if you have already passed and you like your grade, then you do not have to do it. You can leave